All right, so we're officially at that point in the off season where, as a content creator, it is getting very tough to find content as far as the NBA goes. There are no big trades happening. This is right after the Olympics have wrapped up. So I've been forced to get pretty creative. And I was thinking earlier today while I was at work, who are like the real contenders heading into the league this season, right? And so what I wanted to do was separate teams in both conferences into three different tiers. Every single year we kind of had this conversation, who are the real contenders versus the pretenders. And I separated those guys, those teams into three different categories. So I have one tier that are titled the real ones, teams that I can actually see doing enough during the regular season to make a legitimate title run, right? These teams are actually believably championship contenders. Then we have the wait a seconds. These are teams that may have made great offseason additions to the roster, but they aren't there just yet. Something about them makes me a little bit skeptical. I may wait till like the middle part of the season to really make a judgment on them. So those are the wait a seconds. And then we have the liars. Those are the teams that may look like they've got it all figured out on paper, but I'm not buying it at all. This could be because of repeated issues over the last couple of seasons, bad fit despite having a lot of talent, a bunch of different things. But those are the three different tiers. Again, I have the real ones, the wait a seconds, and also the liars. And let's start here with the tier one, and that is the real ones. All right, so the team I'm going to start off with here in the real ones category are obviously going to be the Boston Celtics. There isn't much question here. They just won a championship last season. They brought back literally everybody. They have three guys who won a gold medal with one of the greatest Team USA rosters of all time. Jalen Brown is going to be back next season after winning Finals MVP and having the best season of his NBA career. There's not a world where the Celtics are not legitimate title contenders. All of those questions at this point are answered. This is a team that can win a championship. Only question is, can they actually become a dynasty? That's the question, but without a doubt in my mind, they're 100% title contenders, and they have one of the best rosters in the entire league. Then next up are the Dallas Mavericks. So the roster drastically improved after making a finals run. They added Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall, and also Quentin Grimes, three really good guys who can space the floor, bring some things on the offensive end and also some things on the defensive end. It's funny with the Mavericks because during the regular season, I did not look at them as a contender at all. But by default, since they made a finals run last season, they are a real one. They are a contender, a true title contender in the top tier of that conversation this upcoming season. Next up are the Denver Nuggets. So I was a little bit conflicted with this one. They lost a ton in the offseason with KCP being out. He was like the perfect player for them on both ends of the basketball, one of the best shooters in the entire league, and also a really good on-ball defender, one of the best on-ball defenders in the entire league as well. But they did add back some solid pieces with Dario Saric and Russell Westbrook. I'm very interested to see how the Russell Westbrook situation looks here for Denver. How does he fit within that offense? How does Mike Malone choose to use him? But it's hard to count out Denver because as long as they have the best player in the league, who is Nikola Jokic, on that roster, it's going to be tough to beat them in a 7-game series after they kind of disappointed last year in the playoffs. But they can definitely re-up and get it going again this upcoming season. Also, another tier one contender in that real ones conversation are the OKC Thunder. So last year, they were already the number one seed in the West. I do feel like they surprised a lot of people by getting there despite them being really, really young. We all thought they were kind of rebuilding. We thought it was going to be like a slow process, but they were dominant from start to finish in the regular season. And they made some major offseason additions. They went and got one of the best point of attack defenders in the league in Alex Caruso, and also Isaiah Hartenstein, who's also a really good plug and play big man, one of the best plug and play big men in the entire league. They're a little small down low, so to get him means a lot for their offense and their defense. He was also a demon from a rebounding perspective in the playoffs with his offensive rebounding. We all remember that. Big additions for the Thunder on the margins. Those aren't superstar, all-star level players to add to their great core, but still really good moves to bolster some of their strengths or some of their weaknesses that they had last season and turn them into strengths. So you have to put the OKC Thunder in that conversation. And they did look good in their first true playoff appearance, right? I didn't watch OKC last season and think that in the playoffs, they were losing games because of their youth, right? Like they just ran to a really good Mavericks team, but they did hold their own very well out in the West playoffs. Then you have to throw in the Minnesota Timberwolves. So last year they made their first West Finals appearance since the Kevin Garnett era. They are still a shoe-in for having one of the best defenses in the league again this coming season. They did lose Kyle Anderson, which was pretty big, but they got back two really good young guys who I'm excited to see out of the draft with Terrence Shannon and Rob Dillingham. I think Terrence Shannon fits this Timberwolves culture perfectly. I'm excited to see what he ends up doing. I'm excited to see what Rob ends up doing, but the Wolves will be right back in that conversation. You had a great Olympic showing from Anthony Edwards as well. So we'll kind of take that Team USA gold medal experience and bring it over here for the Timberwolves. It is going to be huge. Again, they didn't make big time signings or roster additions this summer, but given what they did last season, you can't help but think there's going to be some repeated success with more experience from their best player coming into this coming season. This is the last team in that real ones category, and this is going to be a little controversial to some, not to all, but I think the New York Knicks are 100% a title contender. They made additions and signings that didn't sacrifice their core identity. They actually strengthened it. Mikal Bridges is an elite defender, one of the best in the entire league, and is also a really lethal offensive force, whether he's playing on the ball and off the ball. So it shows some great ability as an on-the-ball threat playing for Brooklyn. He'll do that here for the Knicks and take a lot of press or stress and pressure off of Jalen Brunson after his usage was just ridiculous last year in the playoffs. OG Anunoby is back. That was a big-time re-signing. They did lose Isaiah Hartenstein, but that wing defense and perimeter offense looks amazing. And as I said, they made big moves without sacrificing their culture and their identity. They're not going to be a worse defensive team. They actually are going to be better, probably out there on the perimeter. And offensively, there was also a big addition, as I said, with the Mikal Bridges pickup. Also, having a guy like Bridges and a healthy Randle can take a bunch of pressure off of Brunson. Like I mentioned, the presence of Bridges also takes pressure off of Randle and doesn't force him into a second option role. Maybe that'll allow Randle to focus on other things. He has a good body for it. So can this Bridges addition make Randle focus a little bit more on being a really good defender where he struggled in that area over the course of his career? And also there's the reality that Randle can still erupt for big games. So now there are like three Knicks guys who can each have like these random offensive explosions on any given night. This feels like the best Knicks roster since the late 90s. I'm excited to see what they do. I definitely think they are a true championship contender this coming season. Then we go into tier 2. Those are my wait a seconds. Again, kind of reiterating what that means. They may have the talent, but I'm really skeptical. So I'll start here with the Milwaukee Bucks. So I struggled a little bit with this one. They were really disappointing last season. They kind of have to prove to us they're a tier 1 team. Giannis and Lillard on paper are a great duo, but last year they didn't really prove themselves as like this infallible 1-2 punch just yet, right? I didn't watch Giannis and Dame and think, yeah, this is the best duo in the league. Like I didn't think that last season. I think they can get there, but last year they didn't show it. The chemistry just wasn't all the way there. And it made sense because there was a lot of different changes and things going on with the coaching and stuff like that. But they made good moves on the margins on the roster, and hopefully they're healthy this season. But with the Bucks, they kind of have to prove it just a bit after losing in the first round last season and really not impressing anybody during the regular season. So that's why they're in this tier. Another team here in this tier are the 76ers. Matter of fact, I think the 76ers are like the poster child for this particular tier. The talent is all there. One of the best trios on paper in the league between Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. But 2 out of 3 of those guys are not playoff reliable either because of their health or because of them just not showing up when they need to be showing up on the playoff stage. And I like some of the other moves. They had guys like Andre Drummond and Caleb Martin coming in. Those were good additions. And there's also Jared McCain, who I think is going to be in for a really impressive first season. I think he's going to be in the rotation a ton. But as I said, with 2 out of 3 of those guys in that big 3 with George and Embiid, there are a lot of questions. The fit makes perfect sense, but the history of success just isn't there. I don't want to keep believing on something that isn't there. So I'll keep an eye on the Sixers. Again, I have to see it to believe it. And maybe even with them, they may dominate through the regular season, but injuries hit them late in the season and their whole thing falls apart. Like look at Joel Embiid last year. He was playing like at a peak big man level. Like the way he played last year before that injury was like the best we've seen any big man ever play. Like he was right in that conversation, and then he abruptly gets hurt, and it throws off Philly's entire season. That's just a reality with them. So that's why they're in this particular tier at this time. Miami Heat. You can never really count this team out. We don't know how great they would have been last season if healthy. There's this culture they all buy into. Offensively, there are a lot of options, a lot more options actually than what they had in that 2023 finals run. There's Jimmy Butler, Terry Rozier, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero. So 2 of those guys were not there in 2023. Biggest question is health. We've seen that limit them countless times over the last couple of seasons, but largely just does look like a team that's ready to make an impact if healthy. Again, that is a major question mark. How healthy are they going to be? But I like what the Heat have on paper. But again, it's going to be about that availability from all of their guys. Then finally, we have the Phoenix Suns. A really disappointing season last year, kind of like the Bucks, where there's this abundance of talent, but they couldn't get it done consistently in the regular season. And once they got into the playoffs, things kind of fell apart. But they made some great marginal moves. They got Tyus Jones and Monty Morris, two really good floor generals. There aren't many big men here, and I'm kind of worried about that lack of size and play down low. But there's still Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. Booker and Katie are coming off of an amazing Olympic showing. So there's this confidence they're bringing into this season. There's this edge they're bringing into this season. I like what they did as far as getting more point guards to kind of balance the offense out a bit. It's just going to be about them putting it all together. I'm not ready to say they're contender just yet because of how bad things looked last season. The Suns, while they are talented, I think they have to prove to us that they are in that contender conversation this coming season. And this is the final tier. These are the liars. And I'm going to start here with the LA Lakers. So them, I'm 100% going to sit back and watch. I'm not going to call it at all for them. They didn't make any major roster moves. They seem to like what they have as far as their core. There are some issues, in my opinion, especially in the backcourt from a defensive perspective. I don't think D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves are a great defensive backcourt, but we'll see what happens under JJ Redick. Bright side is that you have a very motivated LeBron and AD who won gold medals for Team USA, and LeBron was arguably the best player on arguably the greatest Olympic basketball team ever assembled. So they do have that coming into the season with the Lakers. I'm not a believer at all. I'll wait to see what happens, but it's going to take a lot to convince me that the Lakers are back to like championship level. Then next, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. So on paper, the Pelicans look great, right? They got DeJounte Murray in the offseason, who's going to be huge for this team from an offensive standpoint. Hopefully he can get back to kind of being that all defense level guy. But a core of Zion, Brandon Ingram, and DeJounte Murray along with CJ McCollum, that should be tough to beat. Issue here is health. And it's been so much of an issue with the Pelicans, I really cannot count on them. It's been too many years of them having these really talented rosters on paper, and health just hits them. It's Zion or it's somebody who just misses a substantial amount of time, and they can never get to that championship level that a lot of people expect them to be at this point, right? Like, look at the play-in tournament. Zion had like one of the best games of his career, then gets hurt at the end of the game and just doesn't return. The Pelicans just lose in the first round once they match up against, I think it was the OKC Thunder. Like, that's too much of reality here for the Pelicans for me to really believe in them at this point. So again, I like what they have on paper, but health is way too much of an issue, right? They've had things go their way almost, and then the wrong thing happens. That injury happens, and everything is kind of thrown apart. That's just a reality here with this Pelicans team. I hope it doesn't happen, but that's just been too much of a consistent theme with this squad over the last couple of seasons. Finally, I don't even know why I put them on here on this list. It's the LA Clippers. On the surface, on paper, you think that a duo of James Harden and Kawhi Leonard should be good, but both of those guys have seen better years. Kawhi is not a reliable player from a health standpoint, from availability standpoint. Harden is just a shell of himself. I think that's something that we as fans have come to grips with. He's just not consistent enough. We saw it in the playoffs. Hasn't really been a health thing with him. It's just like his play has declined. I don't believe in the Clippers at all. They have some level of talent there, but I'm just not buying them. Again, they could surprise me, but I'm not buying a duo of James Harden and Kawhi Leonard at this point in their careers. So those are the three different tiers, right? Those are the teams that I think are real contenders, semi-contenders, right? Teams we still have question marks about, and teams that we may think are, but are not at all. And let me know what y'all think. And also, if I missed any teams, let me know as well. But it should be very interesting to see what each of these squads end up doing this coming season. And even if I listed them as liars, right, or on that second tier, who knows? They could surprise. I always say this, the league is super wide open. You don't know what could end up happening. But if I'm making projections, this is what I got about the real contenders, the pretenders, and the flat out, as I said, liars, the teams who aren't going to do anything despite looking solid on paper. Those are those are the teams I think are in each of those categories. So we'll see what ends up happening this coming season with each of them.